Hello everyone, I am Leela Prabhagakar and I am from the Bodhi Academy. So today we'll start with chapter 2 of the Indian economy, class 11th, that is Indian economy during the year 1950 and 1990. Okay, so after studying this chapter, we'll be able to know the India's goal for 5-year plans. Then what are the development policies in different sectors such as agriculture and industry from 1950 to 1990. Then here we will be also able to learn about the merits and demerits of the regulated economy. Now, the first 5-year plan was a central objective of India. So this was to initiate a process of development which will raise the living standard and open out to the people new opportunities for richer and more varied life. So why was this first 5-year plan was introduced? This was introduced for just to raise the standard of living of the people. Okay, so when India got independence on 15 August 1947, India woke to a new dawn of freedom. Now, they were masters of our own destiny after some 200 years ago, or 200 years of the British rule. The job of nation building was now in our hands. So, after the India got independence in 1947, it was the job of the Indians to build India in a very particular way. So the leaders of independent India has to decide among other things what are the type of economic system they are going to adopt, which are obviously they have to adopt such system which is going to build our nation, okay, and which is suitable for our nation. So a system which will promote the welfare for all rather than a few. So they have to build such economic system which is going to give promote a welfare for all the people who are living in India. Okay, so there are different types of economic systems. Okay, we'll see over here different types of economic system. So every society, now there are some central problems of an economy what we'll be going to discuss in this. So central problems of economy. So these are some of the questions which are asked. What goods and services should be produced? How should the goods and services to be produced? And how should the goods and services be distributed among the market? So what to produce? What to produce? Second, how to produce? Third one, for whom to produce? For whom to produce? So these are some of the central problems of an economy. What to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. Okay. Then. So one answer to this question is to depend on the market forces of supply and demand. So in a market economy, which is also called as capitalism, only those consumer goods will be produced that are in demand. So in capitalist economy, we produce only those goods which are in demand. Okay, that is goods that can be sold profitably either in the domestic or in the foreign markets. So here in capital economy, only those goods are to be produced which are in demand. Okay, capital economy produce those goods which are in demand. Okay, then if cars are in demand, cars will be produced, or if bicycles are in demand, bicycles will be produced. Okay, so if labor is cheap than capital, more labor intensive method of production will be used, and vice versa. So there are two types of methods what they can use: labor intensive and capital intensive technique. Labor intensive. Labor intensive is more labors are used. And capital intensive, more capitals are used. Like more machineries are used. Okay, more capital are used. Okay, so in a capitalist society, the goods produced are distributed among people not on the basis of what people need, but on the basis of purchasing power. So purchasing power is nothing but the ability to buy goods and services. Okay, so you should have money in your pocket to buy the goods. So low cost housing for the poor is much needed but will not count as demand in the market sense, because the poor do not have the purchasing power to back the demand. So as a produce the commodity, they are not going to produce. Okay, so such society was not appealing for the Indian economy. So Jawaharlal Nehru, our first prime minister, for it meant that great majority of people of the country will be left behind without the chance to improve their quality of life. So this is capitalist economy. Second is socialist. Okay, a socialist society answers three questions in a totally different manner. So in a socialist society, the government decides what goods are to be produced in accordance with the needs of the society. So economy, socialist economy, government decides what goods are to be produced. Government decides what goods are to be produced. Okay, what goods are to be produced. So here government decides what are the goods are to be produced for the economy. So it is assumed that government knows what is good for the people. So here only the assumption is made that the government knows and government is going to produce those goods which are good for the country and good for the people, welfare of the people. So the desire of individual consumer, so like here the importance is not given for individual consumers, like what they need. Okay, so the government decides how goods are to be produced and how they should be distributed. In principle, distribution under socialism is supposed to be based on what people need and not on what they can afford to purchase. Unlike under capitalism, for example, a socialist nation provides free health care to all its citizens. Strictly, a socialist society has no private property since everything is owned by the state. So, in Cuba and China, for example, most of the economic activities are governed by the socialist principle. The third type of economy is mixed economy. Mixed economy. So now a mixed economy, that is the government and the market together answer the three questions. Okay, so here the government and the market, they answer the three questions like what to produce, how to produce, and how to distribute what is produced. So in a mixed economy, the market will provide whatever goods and services it can produce well, and the government will provide essential goods and services. Okay, so this is what types of economic system is. So, there are different types of economic system what we saw now. So, and among them, socialism appealed to Jawaharlal Nehru the most. So, however, he was not in favor of the kind of socialism established in the former Soviet Union, where all the means of production, that is, all the factories and farms in the country, were owned by the government. So there was no private property, and it was not possible in a democracy like India for the government to change the ownership pattern of land and other properties of its citizens in the way that it was done in the former Soviet Union. So Nehru and many other leaders and thinkers of the newly independent India, they sought the alternative to the extreme version of capitalism and socialism. So basically what they do is, with the socialist outlook, they found the answer in an economic system which in their view they combine the best feature of socialism. Okay, so India will be a socialist society with a strong public sector but also with the private property and democracy. But the government plan was uh, for the economy, with the private sector being encouraged to be a part of the plan effort. So we'll see this, what is a plan. A plan spells out how the resources of nation should be put to use. So this is a plan, like here a government sees how we can utilize the nation's resources. It should have some general goals as well as specific objectives which are to be achieved within a specific period of time. So in India, plans were of 5 years duration and were called 5-year plans. So whatever the plans they made, it was for 5 years. So within 5 years, they have to achieve that particular objectives. So we have borrowed this from former Soviet Union. Okay, they are pioneer in national planning. So a plan documents up to the year 2017 not only specify the objectives to be attained in the 5 years of the plan, but also what is to be achieved over a period of 20 years. So this long term plan is called perspective plan. So here they are thinking about the future. So the 5-year plans were supposed to provide the basis for the perspective plan. So it will be unrealistic to expect all the goals of plan to be given equal importance. So example is given, the goal of introducing modern technology may be in conflict with the goal of increasing employment. So if the technology reduces the need for labor, the planners have to balance the goals. A very difficult job indeed. So what India's 5-year plan, they did not spell out how much of each and every good and services is to be produced. This is neither possible or nor necessary. So it is enough if the plan is specific about the sectors where it plays a commanding role, for instance power generation, irrigation, while leaving the rest to the market. Okay, so here the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1948 and the Directive Principles of the Indian Constitution reflected this. So, Planning Commission was therefore set up in 1950. Okay, with the Prime Minister as its chairperson. And the 5-year plans were introduced from the year 1950. Okay. Now the goals were of 5-year plans were different. Okay, a plan should have some clearly. Now here they gave some specific goals. So the goals of 5-year plans include growth, modernization, self-reliance, and equity. So these were the 5 years plan. Like this goal was India will have to achieve growth, modernization, self-reliance, and equity. Okay. So this does not mean that all the plans have given equal importance. Now we'll discuss all these plans. First one is growth. So it refers, now growth in the sense it refers to increase in country's capacity with respect to its production, okay, of goods and services. So here it implies either a larger stock of productive capital or a large size of supporting services like transport and banking, or an increase in the efficiency of productive capital and services. So a good indicator of economic growth in the language of economics is steady increase in the gross domestic product. Okay, GDP is nothing but it is the market value of all the final goods and services which is produced in the country during a year. So this is the meaning of GDP. Okay, then so here a country has to develop in such a way that they have to see whether the GDP is increasing or not. So the GDP of a country is derived from the different sectors. Okay, first is the agriculture, agriculture, then the industrial and the service sector. So primary, secondary, and the tertiary sector. So this is how the GDP is derived. So the contribution made by each of these sector makes up the structural composition of the economy. So in some countries, growth in agriculture contributes more to the GDP growth, while in some countries, the growth in service sector contributes more to GDP growth. Now here if we can see the service sector, as a country develops, it undergoes some changes, no structural changes. So With the development, the share of agriculture declines and the share of industries they become dominant. So at higher level of development, service sector contributes more to the Indian GDP as compared to the other two sectors. Okay, so earlier in India, the share of agriculture in GDP was more than 50%. But by 1990, the share of service sector was 40.59%, more than that of agriculture or industry, like what we have found in some developed nations. So this phenomena of growing share of service sector was accelerated in the post 1991 period, that is uh, during the globalization, privatization and liberalization time. Okay, so now, so this is what growth means. The growth is how much a country is producing, how much country is producing its output by using the input, that is the raw material, and how a country can achieve its gross domestic product. That implies growth. Okay, we'll see one example of Mahalanobis, the architect of Indian planning. So many distinguished thinkers contributed to the formulation of India's five-year plans. So many thinkers they contributed to India's five-year plans. So among them, one of them is Prasannata Chandra Mahalanobis. Okay, he is he's a statistician. So he said planning is the real sense of the term. Begin with the second five-year plan. The second plan, a landmark contribution to development planning in general, laid down the basic ideas regarding goals of Indian planning. And this plan was based on the idea of Mahalanobis. So in that sense, he can be regarded as architect of Indian planning. So let's discuss some more thing about Mahalanobis. He was born in 1893 in Calcutta, and he was educated at Presidency College in Calcutta, and then he went at Cambridge University in England. His contribution to the subject of statistics brought him international fame. So in 1945, he was made a fellow member of Britain's Royal Society, one of the most prestigious organization of scientists. Okay. Mahalanobis established the Indian Statistical Institute in Calcutta and started a journal, Sankhya, which still serve as a respected forum for statisticians to discuss their idea. So both that is Indian Statistical Institute and Sankhya are highly regarded by statisticians and economists all over the world to this day. During the second plan, Mahalanobis invited many economists from India and abroad to advise him on India's economic development. So some of these economists became Nobel Prize winners, which shows that he could identify individuals with talent. So among the economists invited by Mahalanobis were those who were very critical of the socialist principle of the second plan. Now he was willing to listen to what his critics had to say, and this marks him a great scholar. So many economics today reject the approach to planning formulated by Mahalanobis, but he will always be remembered for playing a vital role in putting India on the road to economic progress. And statisticians continue to profit from his contributions to the statistical theory. So this is what about Mahalanobis is, the architect of Indian planning. Next concept, we'll move to modernization. Okay, so modernization is nothing but to increase the production of goods and services, right? The producers, they have to adopt a new technology. Now how a producer are going to increase the production? By using the new technology and eliminating all the outdated tech products, or by using for agrarian economic can be using the good variety of seeds, okay, and a good fertilizers. So for example, a farmer can increase the output on the farm by using a new seed varieties instead of using the old ones. Similarly, a factory can increase output by using a new type of machine. Adoption of new technology is called as modernization. So this word is very important. So modernization is not only referred to the new technology, but it also whenever you introduce a new technology in the society, it changes the social outlook, right? Such as the recognition that women should have the same right as men. So in a traditional society, women are supposed to remain at home while men work. But modern society, it is totally different. Oh yeah, so it marks the talent of the woman. They respect the women, and they and women work in different places, banks, factories, schools, and such a society in most occasions is also prosperous. So this type of society India should adopt it. Then self-reliance. A nation can promote economic growth and modernization by using its own resources or by using resources imported from other nations. But here self-reliance means India should depend on the whatever the raw materials or whatever the inputs being produced in Indian territory. Okay, but whenever if we are using the imported product, we have to pay out we have to pay the amount for them, no, for importing, and this can lead to the more imports. Okay, and then the Indian exports will go down. So the first 7 5-year plans gave importance to self-reliance. Okay, so here what they did is they avoided the imports, which is very good for the Indian economy. So avoiding the imports is always better for any economy. Okay, because any country, they should depend on their self-made inputs. Okay, so this policy was considered a necessity in order to reduce our dependence on foreign countries, especially for food. So it is understandable that people who were recently freed from foreign domination should give importance to self-reliance. Then it was feared that dependence on imported food supplies, foreign technology and foreign capital may make India's sovereignty vulnerable to foreign interference in our policies. Then equity. Now growth, modernization and self-reliance by themselves may not improve the kind of life which people are living. Here equity is a country can have a high growth, the most modern technology developed in the country itself, and also have most of its people living in poverty. So it is important to ensure that the benefit of economic prosperity to reach the poor sections as well as instead of being enjoyed only by the rich. So in addition to all the other points like modernization, self-reliance, equity is important. So every Indian should be able to meet his or her basic needs. Like the basic needs are food, shelter and clothing. Beside that is education and healthcare. Okay, so in these things there should be not be any inequality between the rich and the poor. So equal distribution of all the resources should be done. So okay, so these are some of the things with regards to our Indian economy, and these were their objectives, okay, of the first 5-year plan, that is growth, self-reliance, modernization, equity. Okay, then we'll move to the next part. Also we have seen what is a plan, and then we have also discussed what are the different types of economic system. Then we have discussed about Mahalanobis, the great architect of Indian economy. Okay, self-reliance, this everything we saw. Then we'll move to agriculture. Okay, so agriculture is the most important part for India, because most of the Indians, they depend on agriculture. So the policymakers of independent India had to address the issues. Like earlier, we in chapter 1 we have discussed that they were not the agriculture sector was not proper, and they were not using a good sort of fertilizers, or not, there were no proper technology for agriculture sector and all. So these were various issues. So the policymakers of India, they addressed these issues which they did through land reforms and promoting the use of high yielding variety seeds. Okay, so we'll see the land reforms. So at the time of independence, the land tenure system was characterized by intermediaries. Okay, so intermediaries are nothing but zamindars, jagirdars, okay, who merely collected rent from the actual tillers of the soil without contributing towards the improvement on the farm. So in chapter 1 we have discussed that the zamindari system was there, wherein the money lenders, they used to take everything, the whatever the profit or whatever is grown on the land is taken away by the zamindar, and nothing was left for whoever for the cultivators. Okay, then we have also seen various other problems what our agriculture sector has gone through. The low productivity of the agriculture sector forced India to import food from the United States of America. Equity in agriculture called for land reforms, which primarily referred to change in the ownership of land holdings. So, there were steps were taken to abolish intermediaries and to make the tillers the owners of land, okay, the one who cultivates. So, the idea behind this move was that ownership of land would give incentives, okay, to the tillers to invest in making improvements provided sufficient capital was made available to them. Okay, then land ceiling. So land ceiling is another policy to promote equity in the agriculture sector. So this means that fixing the maximum size of land which could be owned by an individual. So here the maximum size of land was fixed by the individual. Okay, so the purpose of land ceiling was to reduce the concentration of land ownership in a few hands. Then, the abolition of intermediaries meant that some 200 lakh tenants came into direct contact with the government. They were thus free from being exploited by the zamindars. The ownership conferred on tenants gave them the incentive to increase output, and this contributed to growth in agriculture. However, the goal of equity was not fully served by abolition of intermediaries. So, in some areas of the former zamindars, continued to own large areas of land by making use of some loopholes in the legislation. And there were cases where tenants were evicted and the landowners claimed to be self-cultivators, the actual tillers. So they claiming for the ownership of the land, and even when the tillers got ownership, the poorest of agricultural laborers, they are not benefited from these land reforms. Okay. So the land ceiling legislation also faced many difficulties. So the big landlords, they challenged the legislation in the court, delaying its implementation, and they used this delay to register their land in the name of close relatives, thereby escaping from the legislation. Then the legislation, they also had a lot of loopholes which were exploited by the big landowners to retain their land. So another we can see in Kerala, land reforms were successful, and West Bengal, because these states had government committed to the policy of land to the tiller. So unfortunately, other states, they did not have the same level of commitment. So that's why land tillers faced many difficulties. Then we'll move to the next part, the Green Revolution. So at independence, about 75% of the country's population was dependent on agriculture. So productivity at the agriculture sector was very low, because whatever the technology they were using were poor, and they were not using high variety of seeds, and infrastructure also was not there, okay, with regards to irrigation and all. So India's agriculture widely depends on the monsoon, and if the monsoon fell short, the farmers were in trouble unless they had access to irrigation facilities, which very few had. Okay, so the stagnation in agriculture during the colonial rule was permanently broken by the Green Revolution. Okay, so this was the difficulties what they were facing, and this refers to the large increase in production of food grains resulting from a high yielding variety of seeds. So here they should require to use of good fertilizers and pesticides, and the correct amount of water should be required, in order to get a proper production. So, the farmers who could benefit from high-yielding variety of seeds required reliable irrigation facilities as well as the financial resources to purchase fertilizers and pesticides. So, the Green Revolution took place and using high-yielding variety of seeds was restricted to more affluent states like Punjab, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. So further, the use of high-yielding variety of seeds, it primarily benefited the wheat growing regions only. Okay, then in the second phase, that is mid 1970s to mid 1980s, HYB technology spread to a larger number of states, and this benefited more variety of crops. So the spread of green revolution technology, it enabled India to achieve self-sufficiency in food grains. India is no longer had to depend on other states, okay, or for meeting its food requirements. Okay, so these were the things what India has seen after its independence. So we'll stop till this much, and the next part will continue for the like the growth and other things we'll see for the next class. Okay, thank you for watching my video.